students, how are you all? I hope everyone is fine. In the previous classes, we started a new lesson, National Liberation Movements in the colonies. In that, we learnt about China, two different phases. In today's class, you are going to learn an interesting topic about the rise of Communist Party of China. Children, can you guess what learning outcomes we are going to discuss in this session? At the end of this session, you will be able to understand how Mao Zedong organized different paths by basing his revolutionary program on the peasantry. And we shall discuss how land reform succeeded in redistributing about 43% of China's cultivated land to about 60% of the rural population. Children, are you all attentive? Our learning outcomes are clear. Now, all of you be ready with your textbook, pen and a notebook. Pause the video and watch again. If clarity is required, place your queries in the comment box. Now, instructions are clear that what you should have. Shall we move on to the next topic? Here, we go with today's agenda. First, we shall start with words of the day, followed by pre-conceptual discussion. Later, we will have a discussion on the rise of the Communist Party of China, establishing the new democracy, and land reforms. Finally, there will be a recapitulation. Children, are you all ready to gear up? We have a clear action plan to move on. Now, let me start discussing words of the day. Today's first word is weekend. Verb. Its textbook usage is the long and exhausting war weakened China. Its meaning is to make somebody something less strong or powerful. Its conjugations are weaken, V1, weekend, V2, weekend, V3, weakening, V4, weekends, V5, to weaken, V6. Its usage is the team has been weakened by injury. Second word is enact. Verb. Its textbook usage is the new government also managed to enact laws to protect women, their rights and abolition of polygamy. Its meaning is to pass law. Its conjugations are enact, V1, enacted, V2, enacted, V3, enacting, V4, enacts, V5, to enact, V6. Its derivative is enactment, noun. Its usage is scenes from history enacted by local leaders. Children, it is quite interesting to learn 2 words a day. Now, let us recall what we had discussions in the previous class. China, 2 different phases, establishing the republic. Now, let us go into the lesson. The rise of the Communist Party of China. When the Japanese invaded China in 1937, the Kuomintang retreated. The long and exhausting war weakened China. Prices rose 30% per month between 1945 and 1949 and utterly destroyed the lives of ordinary people. Rural China faced 2 crises. One ecological with soil exhaustion, deforestation and floods, and the second, a socio-economic one caused by exploitative land tenure systems, indebtedness, primitive technology, and poor communications. The CCP had been founded in 1921, soon after the Russian Revolution. The Russian success exercised a powerful influence around the world, and leaders such as Lenin went on to establish the Comintern in March 1918 to help bring about a world government that would end exploitation. Mao Zedong, who emerged as a major CCP leader, took a different path by basing his revolutionary program on the peasantry. He organized the Chinese peasants to fight for abolition of landlordism and built an army of peasants. Millions of landless peasants joined the struggle led by CCP. His success made the CCP a powerful political force that ultimately won against the Kuomintang. Mao, unlike other leaders, stressed the need for an independent government and army. He had become aware of women's problems and supported the emergence of rural women's associations, promulgated a new marriage law that forbade arranged marriages, stopped purchase or sale of marriage contracts, and simplified divorce. The Kuomintang blockade of the communists Soviet forced the party to seek another base. This led them to go on what came to be called the Long March 1934-35, 6,000 grueling and difficult miles to Shanxi. Japan attacked and occupied much of China between 1937 and 1945. They tried to impose a barbaric colonial militaristic rule over China, which had a disastrous impact on the Chinese society and economy. Both Kuomintang and CCP now tried to join forces to fight Japanese occupation. After the surrender of the Japan to the US in August 1945, Kuomintang and CCP engaged with each other in an all-out warfare for control over China. Eventually, CCP was successful in establishing its rule over mainland China, while Kuomintang was forced to set up its government on the island of Taiwan. Establishing the new democracy 1949-1954. The People's Republic of China government was established in 1949. It was based on the principles of the new democracy, an alliance of all social classes opposed to landlordism and imperialism. The new government also managed to enact laws to protect women, their rights, and abolition of polygamy. This enabled women to assume new roles and enjoy equal status vis-a-vis men in various fields. Land reforms. Land reforms were introduced and implemented properly. Comprehensive land reforms were launched in 1950-51 in China. The major steps were a class identification of all village inhabitants, followed by the confiscation and redistribution of landlord and other productive. In this distribution, about 43% of China's cultivated land went to about 60% of the poor peasants in the rural areas. Though this has increased the land holdings of the poor substantially, it was middle peasants who actually benefited most. Irrigation canals were built, particularly in Vietnam. The French were keen to develop Vietnam as an exporter of rice, so they had improved the irrigation network, encouraged landlords, and facilitated the marketing of agricultural produce like rice and rubber. The French began by building canals and draining lands in the Mekong Delta to increase cultivation. The Democratic Republic of Vietnam was formed and Ho Chi Minh came to power in August 1945. They immediately issued a circular for a 25% reduction in land rents. In China, a strong peasant council was organized, united through classification and redistribution of landlords. Thus, the power on land changed from the hands of landlords to common poor peasants. The CCP rule gradually established a single party rule in which the supreme leaders or chairman became all powerful. All opposition activities were disallowed. Now, let us watch a video for better understanding.
The rise of the Communist Party of China. When the Japanese invaded China in 1937, the Kuomintang retreated. The long and exhausting war weakened China. Price rose 30% per month between 1945 and 1949 and utterly destroyed the lives of ordinary people. Rural China faced two crises, one ecological with soil exhaustion, deforestation and floods, and and the second, the socio-economic one called Nigeria, forming unity against the colonizer. Nigeria is a country on the western side of Africa. Nigeria, like India, was a colony of Britain and became independent after a long period of struggle. British colonialism and the making of a nation. Like elsewhere in the world, idea of national states was new even to countries of Africa. The country we know as Nigeria today was actually created by the British by bringing together distinct regions inhabited by different tribal groups around the Niger River system. Northern Nigeria is dominated by Hausa Fulani people who are predominantly Muslims. The southeastern part of Nigeria is dominated by Igbo tribals, while the southwest portions are dominated by Yoruba tribes, while the southern areas are predominantly Christian due to long years of missionary activity. Many people still profess tribal religious beliefs. The story of modern Nigeria is the story of conflicts between these three regions amidst attempt at building a common democratic political system. The legacy of colonialism remains with continued European control over its natural resources, especially petroleum. The region of River Niger is one of the most populous countries of Africa, which has been suffering from different kinds of colonial rule. From the 16th century, it was a major source of slaves of America. Tribal peasants were captured in the interior and sold to European slave traders. With the abolition of slave trade in 19th century, a new interest developed in trade in agricultural produce of this area, especially palm oil and cocoa. The British established their rule over the coastal areas in 1861 and developed Lagos as a major center of administration, trade, and education in Western Africa. It also became the center of residence to colonialism and the emergence of Pan-Africanism and Nigerian nationalism. The late 19th and early 20th centuries marked a resurgence were excluded from the civil service and Africa entrepreneurs, modern education and administrative modernization in the south, while it allowed the pre-modern traditions to continue in the north. In 1939, the British also separated the Yoruba and Igbo regions into western and eastern Nigeria and encouraged competition and establishing the new democracy in 1949 to 1954. The People's Republic of China government was established in 1949. It was based on the principles of the new democracy, an alliance of all social classes opposed to landlordism and imperialism. Once in power, the CCP carried out large-scale land reform measures which meant taking away the land of landlords and distributing them among poor peasants. The new government also managed to enact laws to protect women, their rights. This enabled women to assume new rules and enjoy equal status, vice men in various fields. Land reforms. After 2 years of relatively peaceful attempts and understanding rural situations, forming peasant associations, etc., land reform proper was launched in 1950 to 1951. The major steps were a class identification of all village inhabitants, followed by the confiscation and redistribution of landlord land and other productive property. A leading role in the process was played by work teams dispatched by country-level land. Nigerian nationalism radicalized and grew in popularity and power post-World War II period as Nigerian economy faced difficult times. The backbone of this movement were the Nigerian soldiers who had returned from fighting for the British in the World War and the trade union leaders. In 1945, a national general strike was organized by radical nationalist trade unionists. The national movement was stronger in the more developed South rather than the North, and this created a North-South divide. Even in the South, nationalism was plagued by the ethnic conflict between the Yoruba and the Igbos. As an economic reform program, land reform succeeded in redistributing about 43% of China's cultivated land to about 60% of the rural population. Poor peasants substantially increased their holdings, but middle peasants actually benefited most because of their stronger initial position. Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is an idea which promotes the unity of all African peoples irrespective of country or tribe. This unity was to be used not only to fight colonialism and radical discrimination, but also to build unity among tribes and communities inhabiting the continent based on principles of equity, social justice, and human dignity. One key person in this regard was Kwame Nkrumah, a freedom fighter from Ghana. Independence and weak democracy. The British decided to hand over power to the Nigerians and worked out a complex federal system which recognized the autonomy of the three major regions. Nigeria became independent on 1st October 1963.
Now, let us summarize what we have discussed till now. The rise of the Communist Party of China, establishing the new democracy 1949-1954, and land reforms. I hope you all have understood what we have discussed till now. In the next class, let us discuss Vietnam against two colonizers. Thank you.